The morning it happened, Priya was hemming a wedding dress. That was the detail she would keep coming back to later, in the dark, when sleep refused her. That while someone was burning her life to the ground, she was on her knees with pins between her teeth, making another woman's dream fit perfectly. That was what she did. She fixed things for people. She made others beautiful. She had spent so long doing it for everyone else that she had stopped noticing she never once did it for herself. The shop was quiet. Just the soft hiss of the steam iron and the radio playing something low and forgettable. Priya sat back on her heels, examined the hem, decided it was right, and reached for her phone to check the time. That was when she saw the notifications. Not one or two, a wall of them, cascading down her screen faster than she could process. Tags, comments, shares, DMs from numbers she barely recognized. Her stomach dropped before her brain caught up. The way your body always knows first. She opened the first tag. The phone nearly left her hand. There she was. Her body. Not a photo she had chosen, not an angle she had approved, not the careful, controlled image she allowed the world. Her stomach, bare and soft and real. The stretch marks she had carried since she was 16, silver and deep. The ones she had never shown anyone. The ones she touched sometimes in the dark and tried to make peace with and never quite managed. Public. Posted. Captioned with her full name and the name of the shop where she worked, as if whoever did this wanted to make absolutely sure she could not escape it. The comments were already multiplying. She read 3 of them. Just 3. That was all it took. She put the wedding dress down very carefully, because it was not hers to damage. She walked to the back room. She sat down on the floor between the bolt fabric and the old sewing machine, and she pressed her back against the wall, and she did not make a sound. Not because she was strong. Because the thing moving through her was too large for sound. It was the specific, suffocating humiliation of having the thing you are most ashamed of dragged into a light you never chose, handed to strangers who had decided before they even knew your name that you were a joke. She had spent her whole life managing this. The careful clothes. The way she angled herself in photos. The habit of laughing first at herself so no one else got there before her. A 26-year-long negotiation with a world that had very clear opinions about bodies like hers. And it had still come to this. Her phone buzzed. A message. Then another. Then a flood. Oh my God, are you okay? Did you see what people are saying? Priya, call me. She turned it face down. There was only one person she wanted. One person who had sat with her at 16 when she cried in a changing room and said the words that had held her upright ever since. You are not too much. You have never been too much. The world is just too small. Danielle. Her best friend since they were 9 years old. The person who knew every soft and unguarded thing about her. She pressed call. It rang twice. Then a click. Then voicemail. She tried again. Voicemail. She sat very still. And the thought came the way the worst thoughts always come. Quietly. Without drama. Like it had always been there waiting for her to be ready to look at it. Those photos. Those specific photos. The ones no mirror had ever caught. The ones that only existed because 3 weeks ago Danielle had been at her flat on a Saturday afternoon with a bottle of wine and a phone and an idea. You should do a body confidence post, she had said. You're so beautiful, Priya. People need to see that. Real women, real bodies. I'll take them. It'll be empowering. And Priya, who trusted the one face she had never doubted, had said yes. She had let her guard down. She had believed she was safe. She picked up the phone and looked at the post again. Read the caption again. Saw her name, her shop, her body offered up to the cruelty of strangers. And she understood. There was no one else. There had never been anyone else. What Priya did not know, could not have known, sitting on that floor between the bolts of fabric with her whole world quietly ending, was that the post had already traveled much further than the cruel corners of the internet it was designed for. She did not know that 40 feet above her head, in the building that sat directly above the street she had walked every day for 4 years, a man was being handed a phone. She did not know that he had gone very still. She did not know that everything was about to change. COJ1 did not have hobbies. He had interests which was different. Interests were useful. They served a purpose. Hobbies implied leisure, and leisure implied a man who was not paying attention, and COJ1 had not survived 38 years, 12 of them at the head of an organization that the Korean underworld spoke about in careful voices, by ever once failing to pay attention. He knew every business on the 3 streets surrounding his building. He knew their owners, their hours, their regulars, their debts. Not because he was sentimental about his neighborhood. Because information was the only currency that never lost its value. He knew the alterations shop on the ground floor of the building next to his. He knew it opened at 8 and closed at 7. He knew it was run by a young woman who arrived early, left late, and had in 4 years never once been late with rent. He knew her name from the lease his property manager handled. He had never looked at her the way he looked now. Park Sung-min had worked beside him for 11 years. He had seen Jae-won order things over breakfast that would make lesser men lose sleep. He had never, in 11 years, seen him look at a phone the way he was looking now. Where did this come from? Jae-won's voice was quiet. That was the register everyone learned to fear. Not the raised voice, the quiet one. It's going around everywhere. Someone posted it this morning. The comments are, "I'm not interested in the comments." He looked up. "I'm interested in who posted it, and why her name and her workplace are in the caption." Sung-min hesitated. "Boss, it's just internet cruelty. It happens every day. By tonight, they'll have moved on to someone else." Jae-won looked at him. Just that. A look. Sung-min went quiet. "She works in the building next to mine," Jae-won said. He looked back at the screen. At the woman in the photo who, in the single image where her face was visible, was not performing shame. She was not cowering. Her jaw was set. There was something behind her eyes that the humiliation had not managed to reach. A woman completely, entirely herself. Soft and real and more alive than anyone he had encountered in longer than he could remember. Something in the center of his chest shifted. A thing he had been certain was no longer capable of movement. "Find out everything," he said. "Who she is, who posted this, who that person is to her, and find out how far this has spread." And then, Jae-won set the phone down, looked out at the city below, the same city that was at this exact moment laughing at the woman on the ground floor of the building next to his. And then, he said, "We take it down. If you are still here, still sitting with Priya on that floor, I need you to do something for me. Because stories like this one, the ones about women the world tries to make invisible, they only reach people because someone chose to share them. If something in your chest is already aching for her, tap that like button right now. Not because I'm demanding it, because it tells this channel that bringing you these stories is worth continuing. And drop a comment telling me, have you ever trusted someone completely and been proven wrong? Because Priya's about to discover something about Danielle that goes much deeper than one photograph. Stay with me. Priya went home. She did not know what else to do. Her manager, a kind woman who asked no questions, had sent her home at noon with a look that said everything she was too decent to say out loud. The walk back to her flat was the longest of her life. Every glance from a stranger felt loaded. Every laugh from a passing group felt aimed. She kept her eyes on the pavement and counted steps and told herself she only had to survive the next one. She called Danielle 4 more times. Voicemail every time. She sat in her flat and looked at the walls and tried to make herself eat something and couldn't. She opened the post once more, told herself she was looking to see if it had been taken down. Knew she was really looking because part of her still couldn't fully believe it was real. It was still there. The comments had grown. She closed the app and threw the phone onto the sofa and pressed her palms against her eyes and breathed until the shaking in her chest slowed down. Then her phone buzzed. Not a notification. A call. A number she didn't recognize. She almost let it go. Then something made her answer. Is this Priya Sharma? A woman's voice, professional, brisk. Yes. I'm calling on behalf of someone who would like to speak with you about the post that was made this morning. He's asking if you're all right. Priya went still. Who is he? A pause. His name is COJ1. He's your neighbor in a manner of speaking. He'd simply like you to know that the matter is being handled and that you're not alone in this. I don't know anyone called COJ1. No, the woman said, and there was something almost warm in her voice. But he knows you, in the way that good neighbors notice the people around them. He doesn't want anything from you, Miss Sharma. He simply wanted you to know. The line went quiet. Priya sat there a long time, phone in her hand, trying to decide what to do with a sentence like "You are not alone in this," coming from a complete stranger on the worst day of her life. She told herself it meant nothing. She had grown up knowing that when things seemed too good, too easy, too kind, the price tag was always hiding somewhere. No one reached out on your worst day without wanting something from your best ones. She put the phone down, went to bed, lay in the dark and waited for morning. By the time she woke, the post was gone. Not just deleted, gone. Scrubbed from every account it had spread to, vanished from the tags and the shares and the comment threads as if it had never existed. The account that posted it, gone too. Just clean, empty space where her humiliation had been. Priya sat on the edge of her bed and stared at her phone for a long time. Then she went to work because the rent was real even when everything else felt like it wasn't. The delivery arrived at 11. No sender name, just a white box with a silk ribbon and inside it, a coat. Camel-colored, long, beautifully cut. The kind of thing she pressed her face into in shop windows and kept walking. Cashmere so soft it almost didn't feel real. And a size that fit her. Not aspirationally. Actually, the size her body was right now today, as if whoever chose it had thought about her body with care rather than judgment. As if they had looked at her and thought not what she could be but what she already is. There was no note. There didn't need to be. She held the coat for a long time. Then she hung it carefully on the back of the door and looked at it the rest of the afternoon the way you look at something that asks a question you're not sure you're brave enough to answer. The gifts didn't stop. But they changed. They got quieter and more precise. A book she had mentioned to a customer once. A worn, beloved novel she described as the one that made her believe in love again at 19. Arrived in a first edition she could never have afforded. Her favorite mythi from the one Indian sweet shop in the city that made it the way her grandmother had. A soft blanket in a deep green she had once stopped to admire in a shop window for too long. Things that proved he wasn't spending money on her. He was paying attention to her. And that was so much more frightening. She lasted 8 days before she called the number back. She told herself it was to make him stop. That the gifts were making her uncomfortable. That she didn't want to owe anyone anything. He answered on the first ring. Priya. Just her name. That was all. But the way he said it, like it was something he'd been waiting to say correctly, made something move in the center of her chest that she immediately tried to suppress. You have to stop, she said. The gifts, the whatever this is. I don't know what you want from me, but I'm not going to be someone's charity case. I've been people's project. Is that really what you think this is? Stop thinking about you. Saw what they you. I protected you. Simple. Factual. did her resistance. Not persistence. Patience. The radical, unfamiliar patience of a man who wanted her but refused to make his wanting into her problem. On a Tuesday evening when the rain was coming down hard and she was tired in the particular bone-deep way that comes not from physical exhaustion but from carrying too much alone for too long, she texted him. If the offer still stands. Tomorrow. His reply came in under a minute. It always stood. I'll send the address. She wore the camel coat. She told herself it was because it was cold. She almost believed it. The restaurant was somewhere she would never have walked into alone. The kind of place that had no prices on the menu and where the staff looked at you like you might belong even before you'd proven it. She stood outside it in the rain for 2 full minutes telling herself she could still leave. Nobody would know. She could go home and eat toast and be safe. She thought about the floor of the back room. About the way she'd felt, compressed and alone and too much and not enough at exactly the same time. She walked in. He was already there. He stood when she entered. Actually stood. Crossed the room to meet her and looked at her in the coat the way a man looks at something he has been waiting for. Not hungry. Not assessing. Grateful. You came, he said softly. Don't make it a thing, she said, sitting down quickly. It is already a thing. The corner of his mouth moved. And then they talked. That was the thing she hadn't expected. Not the danger of him, not the weight of who he was and what his name meant in certain rooms. Just conversation. Real conversation, the kind she had almost forgotten existed. He asked about the alterations shop. Why she'd chosen it, what she loved about it, the specific satisfaction of making something fit. He asked what she'd wanted to be as a child. He asked about the novel, the one he'd sent, and why it had mattered to her at 19, and he listened to the answer like it was the most important thing he'd heard all week. And somewhere between the first course and the rain softening outside, Priya forgot for whole minutes to monitor herself. Forgot to angle away from the light. Forgot to laugh before anyone else could. Forgot to be small. She laughed at something he said. Genuinely, the full laugh she normally swallowed in public. Too loud. Too much, and she saw something happen in his face. Something open. Something she didn't have a word for. That, he said quietly. That is what she tried to take from you. Priya went still. Your friend, he said. Danielle. She didn't post those photos because she hated your body. She posted them because she hated that laugh. That ease you have. The way people bend toward you in a room without you doing anything to make them. She couldn't take it from you directly, so she tried to make the world take it for her. Priya looked at him. Something cracked open quietly behind her ribs. How do you know that? She whispered. Because I had someone find out who Danielle is. Who she's been. The things she said about you to people who thought they were her friends. He paused. She has been jealous of you since you were children, Priya. The photos were not an accident or a moment of cruelty. They were a long time coming. The breath left her body in a slow, quiet rush. All those years. All that trust. All the times she had chosen Danielle's comfort over her own truth. Made herself smaller to avoid making her friend feel less. Apologized for taking up space in their own friendship. I don't know what to do with that, she said honestly. You don't have to do anything with it tonight, he said. Tonight you only have to be here. His hand moved across the table, settled over hers, warm and unhurried, leaving her every opportunity to pull away. She did not pull away. She felt the heat of his palm travel through her and thought, this is dangerous. Not him. The wanting. The terrifying, expansive, painful wanting of something she had trained herself not to reach for. I have to tell you something, she said quietly, her hand still in his. Tell me. I'm going to find a reason to end this. Whatever this is. I don't know when, but I will. Because that's what I do. Someone gets close enough to matter and I find the exit before they can. I'm telling you now so you can't say you weren't warned. He was quiet for a moment. Then, thank you for telling me. That's all you're going to say? What would you like me to say? Most people would try to talk me out of it. I'm not most people, he said. And I'm not interested in talking you out of your fear. I'm interested in making sure that when you look for the exit, you find it harder to reach than you expected. Stop right there. Did he just say what I think he said? Drop a comment with your exact reaction because I need to know. And if you've been watching this whole time without subscribing, now is the moment. Because what happens next? What Priya discovers about why Jaewon's world is more complicated than she knows, and what Danielle does when she realizes her plan didn't work, is the part of this story that kept me up writing until 3 a.m. Subscribe so you don't miss a single second of it. He took her somewhere after dinner. Not his home. She wasn't ready for that, and he seemed to understand without being told. Instead, he took her up 40 floors in a private elevator to a rooftop terrace that looked out over the whole city, rain-washed and gleaming, every light sharp and clean and small. She stood at the railing and looked out at the city that had laughed at her 3 weeks ago and felt something strange move through her. The city was still there, still enormous, but from up here it looked manageable. A collection of small lights rather than a wall of eyes. I used to stand up here, he said, coming to stand beside her, and feel like the city belonged to me. And now I mostly just stand here. A pause. Until 3 weeks ago, I had forgotten what it felt like to want to show something to someone else. He looked at her. I wanted to show this to you specifically. She turned to look at him. The lights of the city caught the angles of his face. The careful, quiet man who had appeared in her worst week and had not once made her feel small for surviving it badly. Tell me something true, she said. Which truth? The one you don't usually tell. He was quiet for a long time. The wind moved between them. I have spent 12 years. I'm asking you to decide, he said. Not for me. For yourself. What does Priya want? She had been asked what other people wanted her whole life. What her clients needed, what her friends expected, what the world would find acceptable. Nobody had ever looked her directly in the face and asked what she wanted. Just her. Just for herself. The answer came from somewhere old and quiet and stubborn. She closed the distance between them. Started gentle. His hand moved from her jaw to her hair, and the city spread out beneath them, silent and bright and entirely irrelevant, and she felt, for the first time in longer than she could name, that her body was not a problem to be solved. It was just the place where she lived. Warm and real and finally held like it was worth holding. She pulled back after a moment, rested her forehead against his, both of them breathing. I want you to know something, she said quietly. Tell me. I came here tonight ready to prove that you were like everyone else, ready to find the crack in it, the part where you looked at me the way they all eventually look. Did you find it? She was quiet for a moment. No, she said finally. And that's the most terrifying thing that has ever happened to me. He pulled back just enough to look at her. Something moved in his face, something deep and unhurried. The look of a man who has waited a long time for something and is only now allowing himself to believe it has arrived. Then be terrified, he said softly. I'll be here either way. Below them, the city continued its indifferent glittering. The same city that 3 weeks ago had decided Priya Sharma was a joke. The same city that had scrolled past her body with its coffee and moved on. It had no idea what it had started. It had no idea what it had given her in trying to take everything away. And Priya, for the first time in 26 years, standing 40 floors up in a camel coat in the arms of the most dangerous man in the city, did not feel like too much. She felt like exactly enough. And that, if you stayed for all of it, is where I leave you tonight. Not at the ending. At the beginning of the real story. Because what comes next? Danielle's return. The truth about why Jaewon's enemies have just taken an interest in the small alterations shop on the ground floor. And the moment Priya has to choose between the safety of her old life and the terrifying possibility of a new one. That is a whole other chapter. If you want it, tell me in the comments. Tell me what broke you open in this story. Tell me if you've ever had a Danielle in your life, someone whose love turned out to be something else wearing love's face. Tell me where you're watching from and what time it is where you are. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Every subscriber tells this channel that these stories, the ones about women the world tries to make small, deserve to keep being told. Priya got back up. She always gets back up. So do you.